So what would happen, hypothetically, if you were to take two of the biggest forms of media in recent years and put them together? You would get video game movies. However, this form of media doesn't really work. See, video game movies have always been kind of critically rained upon. They've kind of critically and commercially kind of flopped. And here's why. You see, in a video game, you have something that you don't get in a movie. You have the element of choice. You control these characters, you experience the story. This does not happen in a movie. You follow the characters, you follow the story. So that is why video game adaptations cannot work. But this leaves an interesting question. What if someone were to take the core idea of a video game and adapt it into a movie? This leads to kind of more new wave films, movies that are more unique. This would be films like Wreck-It Ralph from the Walt Disney Corporation, Tron from Walt Disney Corporation again, and most recently Jumanji 2, Welcome to the Jungle. Now, what makes these films different from slocky, terrible video game movies? Well, films like Tron and Jumanji are made with a love for the genre that these other films do not have. For example, Jumanji 2 kind of feels like an old 80s arcade game, which is the sort of thing they're trying to emulate, like your NES/arcade area of gaming, which I feel like is emulated almost perfectly within the narrative. For example, the characters all have the 3 lives, which is something you don't really get in video games now, but they all get 3 lives and they level up and they go on this adventure, which are all things that don't particularly happen in video games now, but because of where it was set, and it was set in the 80s, it had this fun vibe that kind of had a loving tribute to that era of video games. Another good example of this would be the Tom Cruise movie Live, Die, Repeat, which actually did pretty well in the box office and has a very big cult following. Now this movie, to me at least, feels like the perfect movie adaptation of a first-person shooter, due to the fact that every time Tom Cruise dies in the movie, he gets respawned, a sort of Groundhog Day-esque scenario, if you will. But because it's kind of set in this future war, which kind of reminds me of Halo and the later Call of Duty games, it kind of has this video game feel to it because he's trying to complete his objective and constantly dies and has to restart. Or, if you're following video game terminology, has to respawn. Now, you may be like, oh, Finn, but this is just like the trope of the movie. And you'd be kind of correct, but the way the film is portrayed, it's portrayed that they're trying to complete this one objective, and it makes it feel like, not that you have control of the character, but it kind of blurs the lines between, like, a movie and what a video game is. It kind of felt almost like you were watching a video game, and not in the terrible kind of YouTube Let's Play way, but in a way where you can relate to the characters in a simplistic story, and also get all the, like, benefits of watching the character grow. But as I was trying to say, what they did with this gimmick in Live, Die, Repeat is they basically made a parody of Call of Duty, which I can appreciate as someone who's not a very big fan of the franchise. You see, every time you had to do this respawn and go to the objective, it kind of led to the character progressing and becoming a better person, which I feel like the gamers do as well. When you die in a video game, you learn from your previous mistakes, and this also happens in the film. So yeah, that's kind of just more recent examples, but this is not even a recent trend. I would like to go back to the 80s, before the internet even existed, to talk about one very special movie that has influenced my life more than any other piece of cinema, of which I'm referring to Tron. So the movie Tron opens up with the character Kevin Flynn, who owns an arcade, which immediately sets it up for this video game vibe, who gets kind of teleported into a computer system through a series of complicated hijinks that I'm not going to explain here. So what happens in this game is it kind of perfectly sums up the 80s arcade, with the simplistic colour design, to being the first film to ever use computer-generated effects. It really has this video game feel to it. And furthermore, it really sets up this interesting mythology that you would not expect from a video game movie. You would expect, most video game movies have this type of cheap vibe to it, and Tron does not feel like that. You can tell they put the money into it. It also sets up this really unique sci-fi world, one that many fans like myself constantly try to revisit and find in other media. You see, Tron was simple. It knew what arcades were, and it knew how they worked. It knew how people got addicted to gaming, and it kind of played with those ideas and made something that, although definitely doesn't hold up as well as I would like it think it does, definitely has its own unique values, and probably is one of the better video game movies out there, because it really understood what video games were at the time and did some revolutionary stuff that even to today is helping movies and video games move forward. As you see, kind of Tron was a bit bizarre with the way it took video games, because basically the game itself is about these whole bunch of like Avatar clones and like basically sporting games, but takes it to this way where it feels like this sci-fi epic. And you may be like, oh, so they just basically made the game into this big sci-fi epic. It's more than just that, because they originally just took a real simple idea, oh, he's playing an arcade, and built this entire world and narrative around it, something that video game adaptations don't do. So I'm going to leave this off with a question, and the question I'm wondering is, why is Hollywood still trying to make video game movies when there's better ways to tap into the market with films that, although not adapted from video games, could be heavily inspired, like Wreck-It Ralph? So that's kind of just my stance on that. And there you go, that's just the feelings I have about video game movies and adaptations.